Welcome back to another episode of The Daily Show, peeps. Thank you once again for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. It keeps me in kahuna burgers every time you hit like and subscribe, so please keep hitting that for me. I really, really appreciate it. This show is a little bit different from most shows we do, because unfortunately last minute happened and the guest didn't make it. What are you going to do? Well, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to filibuster, Jay. You're going to filibuster for 45 straight minutes. So in this show, it's me on my lonesome, and I'm talking about sales, going over adversities, what happens when the rug is pulled underneath you, like it was for me today, and also just making sure you're getting into, how prospecting works and the mindset of things. Again, I spoke for a while. It's hard to remember everything in one go. The good news is, stay tuned, and you can hear me wax lyrical right on my own on The Daily Show. And I am live. I am alive. But I'm on my own. What you going to do about that, huh? Sometimes you eat the bar and sometimes you eat the bar eats you, or whatever the good old saying is from the Big Lebowski. Today, we're meant to have the wonderful Bess Hour, who is a long-term friend of the show. She booked me and Tony on the fantastic Florida BlogCon once upon a time. We've flown over to Florida, had a whole bunch of fun with Bess and her wonderful husband, Joe. But unfortunately, I think she's been held up because she hasn't managed to show. As they say in the biz, though, the show must go on. So here I am, alone, solo. Going solo. I've sung that before. So instead, I thought, why don't we talk about what happens when you're thrown with adversity in the middle of things? Now, this is pretty much the worst example of when things go wrong and having to just push through. I have nothing planned today. We weren't planning on doing, a show where this guy talks. We were not going to do a show where this guy interviews someone else and asks some pretty important questions and gets them to say some information. So, but what do you do, right? We had this show planned. We could have just walked away from it. It's an internal show, right? We are the masters of our own universe. I'm a wonderful producer, Mason. He's like, nah, I'm calling it. We're not doing it. I'm like, let's go live, baby. Let's go live. What's the difference, right? Also, it's about, what that means to us, right? It's not just a live show. This whole show is plugged into an entirety of our content creation plan. Like, the only way that we're able to stay so consistent at GL and for my personal content is by having certain activities set up like this that we stick to hard and fast. And this show is a perfect example. We're moving into our third year, I want to say, maybe even fourth, because COVID always confuses me. We're moving into a third year next year, and we have been consistent every 2 weeks without thinking. Don't worry about it. Keep on going. And I have to admit, I've only had to jump in like this and do it on my own, maybe 2-3 times, right? 2-3 times in the entire time. And life happens, right? People are going to get caught up. People are not going to be able to make it. So like I say, we could have just walked away from the show. Me and Mason, we would have had the hour free. We would have gone for some beers, maybe some sandwiches, a little dancing. I know he's a great salsa dancer. But as fun as that sounds, it would have caused problems for the future, right? We wouldn't have then had the promos we released. We wouldn't have had a YouTube show to release. We would have had a little hole. And basically, come January, I would have been hearing grumblings about the fact we don't have enough content. And I would have been the one screaming and shouting, asking for just when do I get my content? When's my promos coming out? So why don't we go live anyway? There's always something to talk about, always something to smash out. And Sarah, thank you very much for throwing me a bone here. Sarah Bostock, the wonderful, the phenomenal, the myth, the legend she is, says it shows how things can go wrong. And instead of walking away, he found the positive and showed up. And we're going through a process at the moment of employing some salespeople. And it's really made me kind of look at the whole sales process and why do I enjoy it? What am I successful at? What am I not successful at? Because I'm trying to find people who are going to, fill the holes that I'm no good at and also be able to do some of the stuff I am. And sales is all about that, right? The show goes wrong on a regular basis in sales. You wake up on a Monday morning, you have that big old sales meeting with your sales manager and they tell you how you're going to make so much money this week. And, you get on the phones, you're trying to cold call, you're trying to get out there and make something happen and nothing happens. And week turns into 2 weeks, turns into a month. You haven't got leads on the board. You haven't got numbers. It's very easy to get in your own head and just want to walk away at that point, right? It's very easy. It's a very easy concept to say, okay, well, I can't do this. Obviously, I've tried and tried and tried and got nowhere. But Michael Jordan, right? greatest basketball player ever, right? Did he work harder than everyone? Definitely, right? Did he have just like natural God-given talent as well? Yes. And I saw this in an interview recently with Jimmy Carr, and he was saying exactly this: is like, if he had just that natural talent but didn't put all the work in, would we know his name? Would we be walking around in Air Jordans today? And the answer is no, right? The hard work he put in gave him the ability to put that incredible natural God-given talent on display and get out there and actually, become the greatest of all time. But if he hadn't put the work in, if he hadn't seen the adversity, fallen on his face, hit the brick wall 1,000 times and still picked himself up and then carried on, like I say, we wouldn't know that name. We'd be talking about someone else as the greatest basketball player of all time. The same thing it's just true in all walks of life. You're going to find a reason not to do it, right? And life's going to keep throwing up reasons why you can't do something, or why something's now hard, or it's not optimum, or you plan forever. And then on the day of that thing, like Alanis Morissette says, it's like rain on your wedding day, right? But is that a good enough reason to give up and not get married? Hell no. You get married and you get hitched in the rain. You get hitched wet. That's how it's done. And the same thing is with sales. If you're going to get yourself out there, if you're going to hit that number, then you're going to come against objections, and the rug is going to get pulled underneath you 1,000 times. You can't walk away though. You have to keep putting in that work. And by putting in the work, at some point, magic starts to happen out of nowhere. People always, say to me, it's like, oh, it just happens for you, though. People get in touch with you. People do not get in touch with me. Okay. I get in touch with people. Like, I put outbound out there. And if someone sends me a message, then I follow it up and I follow up and I go out there. And all of that hard work at some point starts to pay dividends. And it does feel like, oh, wow, this is magic. Things are happening out of blue. But it isn't. Okay. It's the hard work you put in. And like, there is no other role, not just sales, but any role where you're not going to literally have a plan for the week, set up, walk into that day and be like, yeah, that person hasn't arrived, or I don't have this, or this has fallen down. COVID showed us that for an entire year. And one of the things that we were amazed at during COVID was how many businesses shut down, right? They were still working. They were still running. Sure, maybe some people were on furlough, maybe they weren't. But as far as the outbound world was considered, they were gone, right? There was no, they didn't market themselves. There was no outbound. Like, I didn't know they were still running, right? Well, guess what? The businesses who did invest in themselves and did show you that we're still there, they gained such a better community, right? They built this community for themselves around the people they had, because they were still out there when it was tough, when things were in the thick of it. They were still out there with a flag in the air being like, hey, remember us. Not saying necessarily selling as much as they were in previous years, but I bet you any penny that this year they're seeing the dividends. And every business we've worked with who really doubled down into marketing, and okay, all the traditional marketing activities were no longer there. There was no chance to do a exhibition, or there's no chance to do anything like that. Well, that's okay, because they lent into other activities. They are all seeing the benefits of that now, right? Across the board, we are now seeing every business who doubled down, invested in marketing, showed people that they were still there, right? Even though their competitors were still there as well. They just weren't screaming and shouting about it. We're now seeing how much business those companies are bringing in, and people know them as opposed to the competitor because they saw them pushing out. So, COVID would have been a perfect example just to walk away and say, hey, we can't do anything, man. We can't do anything right now. I got to go. I'll see you when this is over. I think a lot of people had that idea. They were like, this isn't going to last too long, so I'm just going to ride the storm for a month, and then everything will be back open again and we'll be cool. And suddenly they're 18 months later staring down the barrel of nothing being released and having to essentially start from scratch. Never easy, right? Never easy. It's always easier to keep that momentum going in any facet of anything. I spent 3 months not going to the gym. That first time walking back in was next to impossible. I didn't want to be there. I assumed everybody hated me who was there. And seconds into picking up the thing, I remembered how much I loved this, and it was great to be back, right? So don't let those, it's so easy for those little obstacles, little trip ups, little things, little blocks to get in your way. And you just decide that, okay, we're not going to carry on. We're not going to keep pushing forward. Much like today, keep pushing forward, man. There is no reason to stop. And if there is a good reason to stop, then know it and make sure that you stop. But try everything you can to keep going on, because honestly, that is where the magic happens. When the going gets tough, right? The people who see success just keep going. It's why the saying's been there. And any successful person I know, any of the really successful people I know, eat failure for breakfast, right? I'm not saying they love it. I'm not saying that they're like, yes, I failed. Come on, brilliant. I really was looking forward to failing today. But they see it as success training. Every failure is just a simple hurdle that they haven't learned to jump over yet and that they're going to in the future. It builds mental toughness. It builds business toughness, whatever you want to call it. But of dealing with those objections, of dealing with those failures and not letting it be an all-encompassing, thing that is going to just stop you in your tracks and stop you from achieving your goals. Like that's when you failed. Right. When you allow the failures to actually stop you trying anymore, that is failure. For me, I'm never going to be super fit, 8-pack, can't walk through the door, can't turn around and wipe my own ass because I'm just too goddamn. But I still go to the gym, right? That still going to keep going. And the benefits I get from, the little bit that I try are huge. And quite frankly, you couldn't stop me going now if you tried. Even when I take 3 months off randomly as well.